Okay, you should see my screen. I believe that the questions are both, the first one at least is probably also for Peter. So I will unmute both Susanna and Peter now for the answers.
Yeah, perhaps I can reply to this first one about what consumer protection. I think that whether it's consumer protection or let's say societal protection, and also I think in terms of maintaining and creating the support for all this energy efficiency investment, I think it's very important that there is trust in the EPCs, as well as, of course, quality of the work. And so in that sense, I think that one should find mechanisms that, let's say, indeed this trust is achieved on a large scale. And that you have to, I think what's very important is that I hope that everybody can agree with the principle one has to create trust, and that means reliability of the EPC so that it complies with the legislation. How to do it, each country should see and each sector should see what's the requirement in its own sector and to find the easiest way. If the examples I gave of the household appliances, I think there are, I would say, quite clear international standards. I also think that there is a very large degree of auto-control by the sector. So I basically think that each major producer of household appliances also tests the other one. So there is a large degree of auto-control, due to which I believe that the compliance rate is, I think, quite good. In the building sector, it's clearly very different. So we have a lot of small projects. Each project is basically a unique project. So there, our idea is that you have to count on third-party control mechanisms, and that has to be seen, let's say, on a case-by-case. But without a compliance framework, let's say, and also the possibility of sanctions, we think it is very difficult. Now, that being said, it's clear also that in general, but also clearly in the building sector, I think it's quite normal, the stakeholders are, I would say, relatively, uncomfortable if one speaks about sanctions and fines and so on, which I think is very normal. So this has to be done in a way that the system is, I would say, workable, efficient, not creating too much administration. So you have a lot of boundary conditions to achieve a situation where stakeholders say, yes, this indeed is reasonable. So I think it's the first thing is to be sure that everybody understand or agree that we must create this kind of trust in the market, protect the consumer, protect society, and secondly, create boundary conditions that the stakeholders say, indeed, this is for us a reasonable approach.
Okay, thank you. I think the next questions are for Susanne.
Yeah. So the first one, are the wrong results considered reasonable within the context of the EPC calculation? The calculation has been done according to regulation, but the problem is that definitions for input data are not so specific that different experts achieve the same calculation results. And what we're trying to do is to develop recommendations how to improve the definitions in terms of being more precise to reduce the range of deviation. So, in fact, the EPCs are compliant, so they are not. They are in line with the legislation we have, but we are looking for improvements. And the second question, did you find considerable differences on compliance levels between low-performance buildings and high-performance buildings? And this goes together with the next questions. Are all buildings analyzed in the Austria case study new buildings? In fact, all buildings...
Susanne, sorry, they are different questions posed by different participants.
I know, but answer goes in line. What the buildings we analyzed have been constructed after 2009, so they are new buildings, but they are not nearly zero energy buildings, but they are, let's say, they have a very good energy performance. What we already see is that thermal bridges are a very relevant topic, because the better the energy performance of the building is, the more relevant is how you deal with how do you deal with thermal bridges, whether you do detailed analysis or analysis based on default data. And just to go back to the first question, I think I have to mention that although the recalculation of completion EPC resulted in worse energy indicators, the results are still in line with the minimum energy performance requirements. The reason is that our sample is from the buildings which received a financial grant for achieving specific energy performance targets, and they are usually much more ambitious than the requirements imposed by the building legislation.